We're super excited to bring forth some further learning that we've been doing in the last little while around creating your pre-meeting organizers for the collaborative team meetings so that they're data informed. So let's break into that conversation.
Are you a leader who is navigating the nuances of leading collaborative response in your school or district? Are you unsure of what collaborative response is? Are you looking to understand the critical role leadership plays when establishing and refining a collaborative response approach?
Collaborative response began as a grassroots approach to focus on the needs of students through a framework of collaboration. That approach has grown to a movement that is training leadership and education.
Through the Leading Collaborative Response podcast, Kurtis and I share our own experiences of leading collaborative response and lessons learned as we continue to learn and gain insight through the experiences of working alongside others. We also have the opportunity to engage in conversations with school and divisional leaders implementing the framework in their own organizations.
We know great leaders build great teams because that is what every child deserves. Subscribe to the Leading Collaborative Response podcast and join the thousands of schools seeing success for students through intentional and focused collaborative efforts.
Before we jump into the episode, remember to join our mailing list at jlinsiders.com. Every Saturday, we send out an exclusive video only to our mailing list, along with other templates, resources, videos, and more. We also share upcoming events and opportunities you may not hear about anywhere else. Go to jlinsiders.com to become part of the JL Insider community. So when we think about the success of the collaborative team meeting, there's obviously a number of structures that we talk about that are really critically important for their success. Things like norms, creation of roles, clearly identified notes, document. We also talk about ensuring that we start with celebrations, focus on a key issue. But one of the things that we've learned over time is how important the pre-meeting organizer is for the success of that conversation. Mm-hmm. So for anyone that is watching or listening that doesn't know what the pre-meeting organizer is and how it contributes to the collaborative team meeting, why don't you share with us, Lorna?
Yeah, you bet. So the pre-meeting organizer, when we first begin, especially when schools are first starting the collaborative team meeting, we provide a very simple pre-meeting organizer, and that allows you to start to think about who are the students that you're going to bring forward and what is the key issue that they're currently experiencing.
Now, you said students. We often say when first starting, pick one for a celebration and one with a key issue that you'd want to look at, because we start off slow, get the process solid.
And really thinking quite simply, just being able to identify who is a student that you have and what is that key issue.
Right.
Now, over time, schools usually identify an area of focus so that we can ensure that we don't have the breadth of everything that we do in school to try to figure out what area that we're going to attend to. But over time, a school will say, well, this meeting this time will be on numeracy, or this time we're going to focus on literacy, just to narrow that focus a little bit. Mm-hmm. So just when we start, it is absolutely simply put that you're going to identify a student for a celebration, and you're going to identify a student that is experiencing a key issue at this point in time around that particular focus area.
And so we really want to share within this work that it's not meant to be additional work for teachers necessarily. Quick. We often say if that key issue is more than 10 words, it's probably not succinct enough for us. But really the purpose of the pre-meeting organizer is that when I as a facilitator turn to you and say, Lorna, who's the student you've brought, and as quickly as possible, what's the key issue? You're ready.
Because you've already done that thinking. The other thing is that we often recommend to schools to print off those pre-meeting organizers so that we don't have the ability to write a whole story.
Yeah. I've only got
when it's online,
a small box to be able
continues to expand.
put this in.
But you can just print them off and then jot those notes down. And then at the end of the meeting, you can shred those papers because we really don't have any purpose for them beyond that. But it is just a tool that we use to be able to start thinking toward who are the students we're bringing forward.
Okay, so a lament that we often hear, which is leading us to the idea of being data informed, is sometimes it feels like our meetings are talking about the same students. I've brought the same student or students to the collaborative team meeting on repeated occasions, or I've been in several schools where they say we have our meeting structures and processes and they're working well, we're collecting data and evidence, but the two aren't intersecting. Our conversations are not yet data informed, and this is where creating data informed pre-meeting organizers helps us take the next step. So why don't you start by sharing, how does creating it to be data informed and really color coded, and talk a little bit about what that means, how does that help us get away from, but it's always about the same students?
So
We'll be right back to continue this episode. I wish we had more data, said no teacher ever. Our contemporary schools have an abundance of data we can be accessing to inform decision making from the classroom level to the school level and beyond. Data as a focal point is no longer elusive. The challenge lies in structuring and presenting it in a way that facilitates easy interpretation and actionable insights. How we organize the data matters. My name is Kurtis Houston, lead learner and co-founder of Jigsaw Learning. In this free on-demand webinar, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 mistakes leaders make when organizing data for their teams. Access this webinar, and in addition to how to address these 5 mistakes, numerous free resources will be shared with you that you can begin using immediately. I can't wait to have you join me to ensure you aren't committing one or several of these mistakes within your own organization. And now back to our conversation.
When we take that next step into, and this means that, of course, you're going to need to have gone through the process of identifying what measures you're using and being able to move
What is the
through
data
that.
set?
Being able to move through that, organization of data, and then be able to understand who are the students that we should be talking about.
So I'm going to pause you on the organization of data, because in my mind, the key thing for organizing data is color coding.
Absolutely.
For it. So before you jump into what we mean by color coding, there is going to be a link in the notes that will take you to a free webinar that talks about considerations that you really need to be thinking about when organizing data. Color coding is key within it. So what do we mean?
So simply put, we gather our data and then be able to look through our set criteria for our data to identify who are the students who are doing just fine.
And usually with that, we'd say they'd be green. Or we've seen schools where they add one more layer and say who's exceeding expectations, and we'll make those
talk about that
blue
a little
or
bit
purple.
more too.
Yeah, we'll come back.
Yeah, and then for us to be able to identify students who are slightly below whatever your criteria is set at, and then significantly below. And the slightly below becomes yellow, and the significantly below becomes red.
So I've often shared, kind of going the other way, that it's not yet meeting expectations is red, approaching expectations, which you're saying is just slightly below, same thing, yellow, meeting expectations green, exceeding expectations blue.
So we would contend that our collaborative team meeting should be focused on students who are surfacing in your data in the yellow.
Right.
And when we are consistently talking about one student, often that one student that we're consistently talking about actually surfaces in that red.
Typically, not all
always,
the time, but
no.
Typically our students who are not yet meeting expectations, or as you said, significantly below where we'd like them to be based on the data, the collaborative team meeting is not the space for that conversation. That's why we have our layers of team that are so important. So then we can color code that pre-meeting organizer where you said before, bring a student with a key issue. Now we can say bring a student who is yellow based on the data and what is a key issue. So it requires just a little bit of reflection from the teachers to be able to look at the data set, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. I have a school that worked with a high school where they said one of our key data sources is, of course, our reporting, the course marks that students have, and you set quick criteria to get those color codes. They said any student who is currently sitting with a 0 to 40%, we're going to color those red. If they're sitting between a 40 to 60% on a 100-point scale, we'll call them yellow. So try and bring those students, which essentially are those students just on the cusp. Either they're close to passing, and what could we do? Or they're just barely passing. What do we do?
Yeah. And so when we identify those students in the yellow, it really allows us to attend to the needs of students who are, again, slightly below within that yellow category. And really, when we think about our previous structures or traditional structures that we've had in schools, that we've got structures that attend to student significant needs that are in that red. And within our collaborative team meeting, this becomes the unique structure that attends to the needs of students who are just slightly below or have perhaps a couple of areas that just need strengthening or need a few strategies in.
So as soon as we made that adjustment in our focus, then teams, and I've seen it repeated over and over in schools where they make the adjustment with the pre-meeting organizer, it starts to surface students we haven't talked about. This student who in the classroom is really receptive, compliant, not an issue, but when you looked at the literacy data, she's in that yellow zone, or that student's in that yellow zone. This is something that we could then surface into the collaborative team meeting. We found that it started to surface or flags students that had not been fueling conversations in the past. We'll be right back to continue this episode. As school leaders, we have mounting pressures to ensure that data is not only being used to inform our responses, but can be leveraged to evidence if what we're doing is leading to better outcomes for students. Planning for the effective use of data with our teachers is hard, but it doesn't have to be. When schools have a targeted plan for the collection and utilization of data and evidence related to student success, conversations become more focused and staff can see the impact their collective practices are having for students. Join me for the online on-demand workshop, Establishing a School-Wide Data and Evidence Plan. 10 considerations to maximize the use of data in your school. Part of our Supporting Collaborative Response series. In this workshop, I share 10 considerations for school leaders when establishing a school-wide data and evidence plan focused on the key measures being used to inform priority areas. I also share numerous resources, templates, and samples to help support the effective determination, scheduling, collection, organization, analysis, and sharing of that data. Purchase the workshop and you'll also have the ability to replay all or any portion of the workshop as you wish. Access this on-demand workshop today to learn more about how to effectively align your school's data and evidence as a foundational component of a school's collaborative response. And now back to our conversation.
Well, and it certainly is a way for us to identify specifically who are the students that we should be talking about within our collaborative team meeting when we're looking at our data to inform who we should be talking about.
So we have worked with and seen schools when they first introduce a more data-aligned pre-meeting organizer, that they do it as a whole staff team. Let's take a look at this data set that we've recently prepared, already having that data organized so that teachers don't have to go through necessarily and make those color codes, but then saying together, let's review the data, and then let's prep our collaborative team meeting, pre-meeting organizer ahead of time, reflecting on the data you see. I was recently with a school where they would use afternoons for their collaborative team meeting. The first 15 minutes of their agenda was said, we're going to go set up the room. Everyone else uses that 15 to get ready for their collaborative team meeting. This would be a perfect time to be able to do something like that high school example where I said, where go into your course marks, do a quick review, and get that pre-meeting organizer ready. And then they started their collaborative team meeting. I thought that was a sensational way for the leadership to help support that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of schools who, once they've gotten to that place of organizing their data and color coding it, they actually have a column in their spreadsheet that allows them to identify that key issue right from the start when they start looking at that data. So we begin to explore key issues right off the hop.
So one of the templates that we're going to include in the notes as well is something we've been sharing with a lot of schools now. And it's actually just a simple, for lack of a better word, close statement that can go right on the pre-meeting organizer, so that even in the celebrations, the language on it that's already filled in is, when I reflected on my blank data, I would like to celebrate blank, insert student name, because what I noticed was blank. So that was a great way even for the celebrations to become data informed. And then the next part said, when I reviewed my blank data, blank, student name, was yellow, and a key issue that the data revealed was blank. So again, the connection that this starts to make between what are the conversations and actions that we intend to take based on the data becomes so critically important when we try to, as you often say, connect those two foundational components of the collaborative structures and processes in which the collaborative team meeting is an essential part of, and the data and evidence that we're collecting.
The other thing that it does is to really put us in that proactive mode of ensuring that the students that we're talking about within our collaborative team meeting are the right students in that space.
Well, and we've heard this several times of, if we can catch them when they're yellow, chances are we're going to be proactive so that it's not a situation where a year or two from now, they're now our reds and now we have more significant issues to attend to.
The other thing is that sometimes when we begin with that pre-meeting organizer that has no relationship to the data, then we often either bring up the same student, we already talked about that, or we bring up a student based on a concern that just occurred.
Reactive.
100%. And this really allows us to look deeply at what are our areas of focus, what is the data that we're using to define those areas and to identify students who are perhaps struggling in those areas. And then who are the students that we can provide a few strategies for that will likely move into the green.
All right. Well, we hope that this has given you some further understanding, but then also some examples. And please do check out the video or recording notes, as we'll include some additional links and resources that we've spoken to here. We would love to hear, have you utilized data-informed pre-meeting organizers? What does yours look like? Please share out a sample with us, or share this with another colleague that you think would benefit from some of the sharing that we've been able to do. As always, please reach out if you have questions, if there's comments to be able to add, and we look forward to being able to connect with you again soon.
See you soon.
For more on collaborative response, visit jigsawlearning.ca or join the JL Insider to receive access to newly added resources and content. Make sure to follow us on social media. Subscribe to the podcast and the Jigsaw Learning YouTube channel to access past and upcoming episodes. Join us again to continue to build your own capacity in leading collaborative response in your context.